You know that feeling, right? Someone hands you a spreadsheet, just a wall of numbers, and your brain just stalls? It's a common feeling for sure. Well, today we're going to tackle that exact thing. We're going to demystify the chaos and explore the very first steps to turn any messy dataset into something you can actually understand and use. We're taking it from chaos to clarity.
So often, this is where we start, just staring at a wall of raw, disorganized information. It could be anything: sales figures, survey results, or, like we're going to see today, economic data. Right now, it's just a jumble. There's no story, no meaning, yet.
Take a look at this. These are real unemployment rates, stretching over a 40-year period. But as it is now, it's just a sea of digits: 1.6, 2.1, 8.6, 10.0. It's impossible to see any trends or patterns. It's just data chaos. And this is the challenge we're going to take on. So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we get from that complete mess of numbers to a clear picture? How do we find the story that's hiding in there? Well, that is exactly what we are about to break down step by step. Okay, so before you can organize anything, laundry, your desk, a bunch of data, you got to know what you're actually working with. It's just like sorting laundry, you know? You don't just throw everything in one big pile. You separate the colors from the whites. Data's pretty much the same. There are three main types we need to get a handle on. First up is what's called nominal data. The easiest way to think about this one, nominal, sounds like name. This data is all about sorting things into categories or groups by name. The numbers here don't have any real mathematical value. They're just labels. It's like saying t-shirts are category 1 and socks are category 2. You can't add a sock to a t-shirt, right? They're just different things. Here's a perfect example. We could assign the number 1 to an educator and 2 to a construction worker. That doesn't mean a construction worker is worth more than an educator. Of course not. The numbers are just simple labels to keep the categories separate. Same thing with computer brands: Mac, HP, Acer. They're just distinct groups. Next up, we have ordinal data, and the key word here is order. Just like nominal data, it puts things into categories, but, and this is the important part, these categories have a meaningful sequence, a rank. So back to the laundry, this is like sorting your shirts by size: small, medium, large. See? There's a clear order to it. And a classic example of this is any survey scale. You know, on a scale of 1 to 5. Strongly agree is definitely more positive than agree, which is more positive than neutral. There's a clear ranking there, an order to the answers, even if the distance between, say, agree and neutral isn't some exact mathematical quantity. And finally, we get to interval data. Now, this is what most of us just think of as numbers. These are real, actual measurements where the distance between the values is equal and meaningful. Think about temperature. The difference between 10 degrees and 20 degrees is the exact same as the difference between 20 and 30 degrees. And this is what our unemployment numbers are. So let's just recap real quick. On one hand, you've got your categorical data, which are basically just labels. You've got nominal for simple categories like a job type, and ordinal for ranked categories like a survey response. On the other hand, you've got your numerical data, our interval data, which are for actual measurements like, you guessed it, an unemployment rate. Getting this distinction down is absolutely the first step to getting clarity. All right, so now we know our unemployment numbers are interval data. That means we can start to really organize them. And the classic tool for this job is something called a frequency distribution. It sounds a little intimidating, I know, but it's really just a way of sorting our numbers into logical buckets. And building one is actually a super simple 3-step process. First, you find the range. Just take the biggest value in your list and subtract the smallest value. Easy. Second, you decide on the class width, which is just a fancy term for how big your buckets are going to be. Are we going to group numbers from 0 to 2, then 2 to 4, and so on? You decide. And finally, you just go through your messy list and start tallying how many numbers fall into each bucket. And look at that. After doing those 3 steps with our messy unemployment data, we get this: a clean, simple, organized table. We can now see, just at a glance, that the most common unemployment rates fell somewhere between 6 and 10%. The chaos is finally starting to look like order. But listen, this table, as great as it is, isn't the end of the road. Not at all. It's the foundation. It's the organized blueprint we need to take the next, and honestly, the most exciting step: actually visualizing the data and telling its story. And that's the key takeaway here. You can't build a house without a blueprint, right? Well, you can't build a meaningful chart without an organized data table first. This structure is what makes all of that powerful visualization possible. And here it is, the big transformation. On the left, there's our structured table, our blueprint. And on the right, that's what it lets us create, a dynamic visual story. You can instantly see the peaks, the valleys, all those raw numbers from the beginning have finally come to life.
So what's the big idea from all this? What's the main takeaway? It's the incredible power that you get when you create structure out of chaos. It's a total transformation, from feeling overwhelmed by data to feeling empowered by it.
I really want you to remember this. The next time you see a nice, polished graph in a news report or a presentation, just know that behind that clarity was this exact process. Someone had to face the messy numbers, figure out what kind of data it was, and build the structure that let the story finally come out.
This whole process, it turns that cryptic wall of numbers into a landscape that you can actually navigate. A landscape that's full of insights and trends and stories that are just waiting to be told.
So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you've had a peek behind the curtain, now that you understand these foundational steps of sorting and structuring, what are you going to see the next time you look at a chart? You're not just going to see the lines and the bars anymore. You'll see the careful work that it took to turn raw, messy information into real human understanding.